In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Veni Sancti Spiritus, perpetuorum codifiterium. Et tui amoris, in eis in evacendem, et spiritum tuum creabuntor. Oremus, Deus codifiterium, Sancti Spiritus. Illustratione docuisti, da nobis, in eodem spiritu recta sapere, et Deus semper consolatione caudere per Christum Dominum nostrum.
Amen.
Cor Maria Immaculatum,
Ora pro nobis.
Sancte Joseph,
Ora pro nobis.
Sancte Tadei,
Ora pro
in nomine
nobis.
Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Okay, let's continue on the lesson 21. We saw the first commandment of the church is what, Anthony?
Church's laws.
Yeah, what's the first commandment? There are 6 commandments of the church. What's the first?
Assist at Mass on Sundays, holy days of obligation.
Yes, so we saw that, and that includes, of course, God's law not working manual work on Sunday. Can you study on Sunday? Yes. Can you do a research paper and do homework? Yes. Can you do normal household chores like dishes and cooking? Yes. Can you play sports? Yes. 2. What's the second commandment of the church? Anthony?
To fast and to
Louder.
To fast and to abstain on the days appointed.
Yes. So Ember Days, Lent, and vigils. 3, go on.
To confess our sins at least once a year.
Yes. So, if people only went to confession once a year, in normal access to confession, they'll have a hard time getting to heaven. Right? So this is like Mother Church lowering the bare minimum to get to heaven. And of course, she's keeping in mind those who live far away from any church or out in the missions. Especially back to that again today. Some people don't have the chance to go to confession but once a year. 4.
To receive Holy Communion during the Easter time.
So Easter time is strictly from, this time receiving Holy Communion, it goes from Septuagesima till Trinity Sunday. That's how long of a span it is to go to communion. So the church really gives souls the chance to go to confession, go to communion at least once a year. Obviously, again, if that's all we do is once a year, we're probably not gonna make it in these days. When someone has Mass and confession and Holy Communion available without compromise on the faith. 5, Michael?
To contribute to the support of the church.
Yes, a lot of people ask, do I have to give 10% of my income? And I guess Protestants heavily promote that. You have to give 10% of your income. The church doesn't say anything like that. You can give more, you can give less. There's no set contribution to the church. But obviously, it helps. In our case, it helps to feed the seminarians, pay for the vehicles, pay for the altar wine, candles, the hosts, everything pertaining to travel for the Mass circuits, etc., etc. So there's no set amount, but people shouldn't be too stingy either. We have the example of Jesus and Mary and Joseph. When Joseph had any income, 1/3 of it would go to the poor, 1/3 of it to the temple, and the rest for themselves. That's how the Holy Family did it. 6, Michael, 6th commandment of the church.
To observe the laws of the church concerning marriage.
Yes. So, yes. And this means if a baptized Catholic marries outside the church in front of a Protestant minister or a civil court, justice of the peace, is that a valid marriage? No. A baptized Catholic must marry before a priest to be valid. That's one of the laws of the church. Another practice of the church is between engagement and marriage should not exceed about 6 months. It's not a fixed rule, but it's an encouraged rule. Yes?
If two Protestants get married, does God recognize, I know it's not a sacrament, but does God recognize them as husband and wife?
Yes.
Okay.
If two Protestants get married before their minister and they are baptized, it is definitely a contract, a natural contract for sure.
Does that count for Catholics who leave the faith and go to Protestantism and marry a Protestant?
No.
Okay, it does not.
No, once they're baptized Catholic, it's marked on their soul forever. So they have to marry before a priest. If a Catholic marries outside the church or attempts marriage outside the church, such as at the justice of the peace, it's a mortal sin. It's a mortal sin. A lot of Catholics, lax Catholics, don't know this. They don't even know these simple laws of the church. So, you know, Michael?
Besides these 6 commandments, there are many other laws regulating the government of the church and the administration of its affairs.
E?
The collection of laws binding the Latin Church is contained in an official book called the Code of Canon Law.
Yeah, the Code of Canon Law, which Pius X really worked to improve and pull together in one book. Because before, many of the laws were kind of scattered. You know, France had their laws, South America had their laws. So Pius X did a great work to pull the main laws together of the church in one book, called the Code of Canon Law. And it's sometimes called the Pio Benedict XV Code of Canon Law. Now, the new Code of Canon Law was issued by Pope John Paul II. What year, anybody?
1981?
Close, 83. And Pope John Paul II, when he issued the new Code of Canon Law, I cannot say legitimately promulgated, but when he issued it out and published it, he said explicitly, this law, this new Code of Canon Law, puts Vatican II into practice. It's Vatican II into the laws. So you have the heresies of Vatican II being actually put into practice. Anybody know an example?
It says that, I'm pretty sure it says that non-Catholics can receive the Eucharist in extreme cases. It doesn't tell you what the extreme cases are.
It doesn't even say extreme cases for that.
Does it just say non-Catholics?
Yeah, non-Catholics can go to Holy Communion in the Catholic Church. Yes. Yes.
And
It's very serious, because that's a sacrilege.
was it the new code that permitted cremation?
Yes, and it lifted the excommunication for Freemasons. It permits, in the old code, if a Catholic married a non-Catholic, the non-Catholic had to promise, I will raise the children Catholic. They had to promise that. In the new code, that's dropped. So what heresy does that favor? What's the main heresy behind New Mass in Vatican II?
Ecumenism.
Ecumenism. Yeah, the false ecumenism, yes. Treating all religions as if they're equal. Treating all religions as if they're vehicles of the Holy Ghost. So now in the new code, the non-Catholic spouse does not have to promise, which is a very serious omission. Very serious. And then there's many other ecumenical things about the new code. There's many other collegial things. The laity are put almost on a par with the state of the clergy on handling the Holy Eucharist, handling sacred things. So it is Vatican II in practice. That's why we cannot accept the new Code of Canon Law point blank, which Bishop Follet did in the doctrinal declaration. It's very serious. You at least, if you accept the new Code of Canon Law, you have at least have to put in the clause with distinction, because you can't accept everything in the new code. And one can argue there might be some improvements in the new code, such as the age of marriage is put later in the new Code of Canon Law. And some might argue, well, that's a good decision. But, the old Code of Canon Law, I have to review this again. It's been a while, but I think it's for girls, the age is, I think it's 16 for marriage. And for boys, for the man, it's 18. But I do stand to be corrected. And then the ages of fasting also went lower in the new code. The new code, they hardly have any fasting anyway. 2 days of fast in the church year in the new Code of Canon Law. In the old code, the fasting was more frequent, and you don't fast until age 21 to 59. In the new code, they dropped it to 18 to 59 or 60. And then, of course, abstinence on Friday starts at age 7. So, yes.
Isn't one of the problems with accepting the new code is
Louder.
you basically have to write your own code, because you have to basically then sort through the entire thing, say this is good, this is bad, throw this out, keep this. So you're not really taking the new code, you're just you're playing authority and you're making your own code.
Right. And that's why Archbishop Lefebvre, there's many quotes of his saying we can't accept this new Code of Canon Law. It's too filled with heresy and error. It's permeated with the errors of the council. So I think, Archbishop Lefebvre, he probably should have been stronger on that in his last years, because Father Schmidberger, under his nose, started having the new Code of Canon Law. We studied it in the seminary and contrasted it with the old code and saw the blaring errors that are in it. Yes?
When John Paul II said that the new Code of Canon Law was Vatican II put into practice, is that anywhere in his right? Like, did he write that, or?
Yeah, it is in the letter issuing the new Code of Canon Law. You probably will find it at I don't even know. I think we have one new Code of Canon Law upstairs in the library. We'll have to have a health section. And most society libraries did. And I'm sure it's in that cover page, like the prologue. Okay, 282, page 165. What sin does a Catholic commit who through his own fault misses Mass on a Sunday or holy day of obligation? And this is obviously a true Catholic Mass, no compromise, and all that. Tony?
A Catholic who through his own fault misses Mass on a Sunday or holy day of obligation commits a mortal sin.
A, go on.
The grave obligation to hear Mass on Sunday and holy days of obligation does not bind the following. First, those who must care for the sick. Second, those whose illness does not permit them to go outdoors. Third, those who live a considerable distance from a church. Fourth, those who must give immediate attention to urgent work.
Yeah, so the horses break out of the barn, or they break out through the fence, and the horses and the cows are going all over the neighbors' yards into the streets. Yeah, and it's Sunday, and you got 10 minutes to leave before Mass, and suddenly this happens. Well, yeah, you have to deal with an emergency. Or the pipes freeze and burst. In the house, you could lose your whole house. So These are instances where obviously common sense kicks in. All right? Or there's a huge, gigantic snowstorm and you're buried in. Or you worked late at night and you just want to sleep and you're too tired. Well, of course you can miss Mass.
No.
Does that count?
No.
Well, it's Super Bowl Sunday, and it only happened once a year, so we can miss Mass on that day, Sunday too, right?
Well, if you went to the Saturday vigils.
Oh, no. No, not here. Not in tradition. No way. Yeah. A person in doubt about this obligation should consult a priest. Yeah, that can happen. Father, my mother's very sick, but she can feed herself and take care of herself most of the day. What should I do? Stay with her or I go to Mass? And the priest will probably, say, you make the judgment. It's common sense. If you know that she'll be okay, and then you should go to Mass. But if you know she needs help getting to the bathroom and she could fall, then stay home with her. And I understand one priest said that in Spain it was a common practice with young baby infants. Most mothers stayed home because the babies need continual attention. And they scream and they need their diapers changed and they always got to eat. So many young mothers would just stay home, or the father and the mother take turns. This happens a lot in traditional families. Mom will go with the older kids to Mass. The husband will go to a different Mass and look after the younger kids when she's gone. So they'll juggle those kind of things. But, yes, so something must be said about babies screaming at Mass and walking around during Mass. They should be contained. They shouldn't be a huge distraction. Of course, they're children and they're going to be children. But parents should have also the courtesy, out of respect for the Blessed Sacrament, out of respect for the Mass, out of respect for others, to take the child out if they're just too rambunctious, if they're screaming. You just got to take them out. But some of the young families don't have this sense anymore. They just don't have common sense. The baby's screaming, he's being loud, he's running around, and the mother's there in ecstasy praying her missal. Is she pleasing God? No. Is she being a pain in the neck to the priest at the altar and everybody else in the church? Yes. Yes, she is. And she's got to learn to know when to take the child out. And that's just common sense, and it's respect. And the old people really get irritated because a lot of them have hearing aids, right? So when a baby screams, it's twice as loud, 10 times as loud. It's magnified in their ear. So they really get upset. I've seen some old people turn around and scowl at some young mothers. Obviously the mother can't control every volume and every sound the baby makes. And sometimes they just burst out screaming. Well, once they do that, you take the child out. It's common sense. And a lot of our chapels in the society anyway always had baby crying rooms. Baby crying, the famous baby crying room, where they can take the baby and still see the Mass in the back, or go down to the basement. Some have a camera, a live stream of the Mass going in the basement, and they can assist at Mass like that. So, but yeah, it's just common sense. But I mean, it's crazy that I even have to say anything. And sometimes we have to say this from the pulpit. One time at Mass, this young mother, God bless her, I think she meant well, but the baby was just uncontrollably screaming. And it's a small chapel, and I'm trying to preach a sermon, and it's so loud you can't think. And then all the other people are getting irritated. And I tried to be as kind as possible. I said, there is the baby crying room in the back. You're welcome to take the baby there. Well, this particular woman, most ladies will, they have common sense and get out of them. But this one took offense to that, and she never came back. She felt insulted. So, I mean, she has to have a little common sense, right? The precious, gorgeous, sinless child that they think they are, they have original sin. But anyway, yes.
I was just, maybe it's a misunderstanding of, as you talk about that your first obligation is to your state in life, so the mother would gain more merit by leaving taking care of the baby than she would just sitting in the pew reading the missal. So
Yes.
maybe it's a misunderstanding with that.
Yes. Her first duty at Mass is, yes, attend to the children. And if they're good children, which actually goes right back to the womb. The children are being formed right in the mother's womb. The voice of the mother, the voice of the father. If they argue, if they fight, that'll frustrate the child. He'll feel that. If they're at peace and there's a charity between them, the child will sense that. They'll sense the music that they listen to. The music is already forming their emotions in the womb. So that's why it's very important to expose children to good music, healthy music, and not the modern junk. Basically, everything from the 50s on is pretty much junk, with exception. There are some good movie soundtracks. There are some good folk music. Well, we're not going into that here. But the first duty of the mother and father is to look after their children at Mass. And that is their prayer. They got to see that. That is their prayer. Yeah, but when I come to Mass, the baby's always misbehaving and screaming, and I have to stand outside or in the basement or in the back, and I never get to go to Mass. Well, you're pleasing God. You're doing your duty of state. So don't worry. Right? All right. Which are the holy days of obligation in the United States? Anthony.
The holy days of obligation in the United States are these 6. Christmas Day, December 25th. The Circumcision, January 1st. Ascension Thursday, 40 days after Easter. The Assumption, August 15th. All Saints Day, November 1st. And the Immaculate Conception, December 8th.
Yes. In Australia and Canada, Epiphany is the holy day of obligation. And England has different ones. So it's a decision of the bishops, usually, in the founding stages of a country. At least in our case, the Baltimore bishops at the Council of Baltimore. And these holy days of obligation are fixed and they should be respected. And now, of course, with Vatican II and the laxity of the Novus Ordo, they're switching a lot of these. If they fall on a weekday, they're switching them to the Sunday, which is, quite honestly, an abuse. And even the new SSPX is starting to do that. So on Ascension Thursday, they say, well, it's a Thursday, it's a work day. It's not strictly a holy day of obligation. So they're starting to bow down to these Novus Ordo laxity. Go on. There are 4 other holy days of obligation in the Universal Church. Go on.
The Feast of the Epiphany, Corpus Christi, St. Joseph, and Saints Peter and Paul. With the approval of the Holy See, these 4 feasts are not holy days of obligation in the United States.
284, Michael. What else does the Church oblige us to do on holy days of obligation?
The Church obliges us to abstain from servile work on holy days of obligation, just as on Sundays, as far as we are able. Catholics who must work on holy days are obliged to hear Mass unless excused by a reasonable grave cause.
Okay, so what if it's a work day, Ascension Thursday or November 1st falls on, this year it's on a Sunday. No, it's on Saturday, so we will have the Mass here. But what if it falls during the weekday? Question 239. We covered this before, but let's look at it quickly. 239 and 40. Look at page 140, number 239. What is servile work? That is forbidden on the Sundays. Servile work is that which requires labor of body rather than mind. So basically anything that you would have a slave do. So read on, Michael. A, farming.
Farming, mechanical and industrial labor, and business transactions are forbidden, even though one does them for pleasure and without any gain. Reading, writing, typewriting, studying, drawing, painting, embroidering, playing music, traveling, hunting, fishing, and the like are not servile works, even though they may require considerable bodily exertion. The obligation to avoid servile work on Sundays is grave, and therefore its violation is a mortal sin if one works for a notable time.
When is servile work allowed on Sunday, Tony?
Servile work is allowed on Sunday when the honor of God, our own need, or that of our neighbor requires it. A, it is permissible on Sunday to do work directly concerned with divine worship, to perform necessary household duties which cannot conveniently be anticipated or deferred, to take personal care of the sick, and to do work required for the common good or necessary for one's own livelihood.
Okay, yeah, so I know many farmers and cows, they don't take a vacation on Sunday. They have to be milked twice a day, including Sunday. So farmers know this. They have to milk and go to mass between the milking. So it's work, and with it also comes gathering the cows. You gotta milk them, and then you gotta clean all the equipment. You gotta shovel the manure. So there's a lot of work involved, but that's necessary for their state of life. So that would not be sinful, obviously. But, it's a nice day, I gotta cut my grass, although it could wait till Wednesday, and I do it anyway. That is manual work, and that can be a mortal sin. And a bad example as well. But I do it for recreation, Father. It's enjoyable to me. Yeah, but it's still manual work. And the people who see you and your neighbors, you're giving them a scandal. A Catholic working on Sunday. So, adjutorium nostrum in nomine Domini.